Good morning, or should I say good evening or afternoon. At this moment, it's afternoon in Malaysia. And I'm hosting today, and my guest today is one of the co-founders of TreeTherium, Kwai Nam Loh. He's also in Malaysia. So to you also, good afternoon, Kwai Nam. How are
Good
you, sir?
afternoon, Frank. Hi.
I know you had a bit of a busy travel schedule, yeah? You've been to various countries recently.
Yeah. I just came back from Japan yesterday.
Right. Koinam, for the people that don't know you yet, could you explain a little bit on who you are, what you do, what interests you, what gets you here today? Maybe that's a good introduction.
Okay, yeah, I'm a technology enthusiast. I run a business called EP Tech, which stands for Empowering People with Technology. So this business has been around for probably about 30 to 40 years. And I started off looking at technology that will really literally change the world. Um, and got them in and do systems integration and make it as a solution to our customers. And I continue to look at different technology to empower people. Then, of course, I stumbled into blockchain technology in the year 2017 when I first
2017. Early
yeah
adopter, yeah.
when I first not too early. I wish I
True.
could have done that earlier, but
Yeah.
then I think it was the right time. The technology has gained some adoption instead of it was so new and nobody knows about it, nobody trusted it. 2017 is, I think, a good time to get involved in blockchain technology. And since then, I've been involved in learning and also sharing my knowledge, just like any other technology that I share with my customer, with my friends, associates. I'm always enthusiastic and sharing all these new things. Right now, I'm involved in AI sharing as well. So anything that helps me in terms of technology, I will share with my friends and associates. So when it comes to blockchain, I started doing that and I learn a lot and I share a lot. So I've got various social medias that I have followers,
Yeah.
like WhatsApp groups, and then I continue to do workshops, sharing my knowledge and helping people to gain adoption of what's new in the blockchain
Right.
world. Yeah.
Can I add, because of course I know you a little bit better than what you just shared. Could I, because you're very humble in what you just said, could I share with everybody that in principle you have started workshops where you actually train people on the use of blockchain and crypto from, we have all these loud videos on YouTube, people saying, oh, let's fly to the moon and all this, but you stayed very to the ground, really to the basics, teaching people on what is a wallet, how to apply, how can I get my fiat money into crypto world and back and forth, how do I secure? So, but how many people must you have trained over the years? Do you have any idea?
Oh, I started off doing it during the pandemic, right?
Right.
So
Okay.
when 2020 started, I'm glad I had all the time in the world during the lockdown to dive deep into it. I studied a lot about it, and everything I knew that I found, I started sharing even on Zoom sessions with my friends and associates, and that got me started to have literally doing it once a week. And
Right.
there probably I managed to reach out to probably a few thousand people, right? And then when the lockdown is over, and I realized that blockchain technology is kind of not complex, but it is like riding a bicycle. You cannot just look at a video, watch a video, and know how to ride it. You got to be hands on.
To
So
yes.
I started doing hands on workshop when
Yeah.
the lockdown is over, and I find that was more effective. And then in fact, during the Zoom session time during the lockdown, there was very low in adoption, right? Because people just heard about it, but they still dare not jump in because it involves money, right? When it comes to blockchain and cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Then when it was the real hands-on sessions, I of course my sessions were never about investment, right? It's
Yeah.
about technology. I always say when it, when it comes to cryptocurrency, first understand it as a technology, then you understand it as a monetary system, right? Don't change the order. If you look at it as money first and then you ignore the technology part, then it is a bit risky or dangerous sometimes
Yeah.
I call. So people understand the technology part, and then once they understand it, they know that they know how it works. Then they are more courageous in putting real money into it.
Yeah.
So then people started to adopt it after attending my hands-on workshops.
Yeah, I've been to these workshops, and I've been to many of your
Yeah,
workshops,
yeah,
and
Frank,
yeah,
one of
it's
those. Yeah,
yeah. I'll be honest with you, and I don't think I've told this to many people yet. But I mean, I started as yourself in 2017, but I started on the mining side, so I learned how to do the mining, and I accumulated quite a bit of crypto, but I had no idea what to do with it until I came to one of your workshops, and we knew each other for many years, but I had no idea you were also doing something in the blockchain and technology. So until I came to the very first workshop, and I thought, wow, this is now I really start to believe. And I remember that you made me read the actual Bitcoin peer-to-peer white paper at the time, which is in principle it's in the end, it's this whole industry, the whole blockchain and crypto industry is in principle based on 9 pages of white paper.
yep, yep,
It's stunning. It's totally stunning, and I'm sure that
yeah.
at the moment you have very similar experiences. When Bitcoin was at $16,000, nobody wanted to call you. Now it's at $100,000, and now suddenly they're all calling you. So yeah, it's
Yeah. Now that Bitcoin is nearing 100,000, I got so many questions, right?
exactly.
And,
I have the same, exactly the same. Yes. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about TreeTherium because, of course, and then I had this morning I had a podcast with one of our other co-founders with Matthias, and in principle in TreeTherium it's all about nature. It's about the health of the planet. It's about planting trees, but to tokenize and manage the funding part of the tree planting worldwide, where we need hundreds of billions of trees. That we will do on the blockchain, and that's also one of the advantages of using TreeTherium platform to actually make that happen. So today I can, because I know we can go very deep and very technical, but let's keep it a bit lightweight today.
yeah,
Um, in principle, what we're going to do in the language of blockchain, what we are going to do is tokenize. We're going to tokenize trees. So in principle, you have planted a real tree in the piece of land. This is not a digital tree or anything, but we're going to tokenize, where we actually digitize it, right? And what we're going to do is digitize what they now call in the industry real world assets, RWAs. And that's a bit of a buzzword because in the property industry, it's real world assets for sure. So I would like to discuss this a little bit with you. Maybe we can start at the beginning, what actually tokenizing is and how that works on the blockchain. So yeah. So could you explain to us maybe in some very basic terminology, and what is actually tokenizing? What is the digitizing part of a real world asset?
okay. So when Bitcoin was started, it uses this technology called blockchain technology that enables digitizing of real assets. Right? We've never heard of, say, a photograph being digitized, and then you prevent it from it being owned by somebody else, right? So a photograph is a photograph. I send it to you, Frank. You could send that photograph to everybody else and 1,000 copies, right? But
Yep.
one thing that the blockchain technology is able to do is it prevents, when it comes to cryptocurrency, double spending. And then when it comes to NFT, which is non-fungible token, right? Ethereum is going to be a one non-fungible token when we plant a tree. So non-fungible token means it prevents double owning them, right? So
Correct.
on the blockchain, everything is recorded, meaning it is unchangeable. You cannot change the information there. So once something is minted, right? Minted means you create it on the blockchain. A record is created on the blockchain, and these will be created and synchronized on many computers. Yeah. So on our TreeTherium project, we run it on the Solana blockchain. So there's so many different blockchains. Yeah. You heard of Bitcoin having its own blockchain, and currently there are many new blockchains that emerge. Again, this technology is continue to grow. So
Yep.
we run our project on the Solana blockchain. So many computers around the world records this information, and once it's recorded, it cannot be changed. It is a permanent record in history on the blockchain. So if I plant a tree, it is registered, then it becomes a permanent record. By tokenizing it, it means that we create a token that can exist in somebody's wallet, a crypto wallet. So
Right.
if I hold a wallet, I plant a tree, and that NFT or that token is given to my wallet, I am the only owner of that tree. Nobody
Yes.
else can have it. So that's what tokenizing means on the blockchain.
Okay. So you spoke about an NFT. I understand that an NFT is in principle a digital assets that then gets created. So we digitize the tree, and then we can also add pictures, data. Who was the planter? Who owned the land where we planted the tree? The date of
Yes,
the
yes,
event, if there is a name to the event. All of this can be recorded on that NFT. Correct?
yes, yes. So you can put a lot of information on the blockchain, right? Other
Right.
than just recording a transaction. For example, I send you a Bitcoin, on the blockchain, it will see that the date and time and the amount of Bitcoin from what address to what address. So there's one kind of a transaction record. But for NFTs, we can create a lot of what we call metadata fields for all those information. So literally like a photograph, when you take a photograph, you will have the shutter speed, the location, the time and date of it taken, right? So for our TreeTherium project, we will record all the essential information, like the
Yeah.
location of the tree, the type of tree, date and time it was planted, and then who owns it, and all those information are on the blockchain.
Yeah. So just for our listeners and viewers to understand, every tree gets a unique geolocation. And of course, you can't plant two trees at the same geolocation. So that's where the ownership comes into. Of course, somebody will own the land, and so that person, I mean, with owning the land, you in principle also own all the trees. But now one of the things that we see is that you can actually have shared ownership, because let's say you have own somebody plants fruit trees on your land. You could share now the produce of these fruits with the person that actually planted that tree. So we can reward people for the efforts that they have, the time and effort that they have put into actually planting that tree. So yeah, I mean, that is partially the idea behind TreeTherium. Now we just, I mean, you just used a few technical terms like blockchain and crypto. I think crypto at the moment it's all over the news. It's front page news almost everywhere. But let's go a little bit back to what crypto actually exists on. I mean, crypto, from what I understand, crypto is based on a technology called blockchain technology. Can you explain in simple terms on what blockchain actually is? What happens in that process, and how could these computers talk to each other? How does that work?
Okay. So I mentioned about the immutable or unchangeable nature of the blockchain or the database or the information in there. So using Bitcoin which is a good example, all right? We always learn from how it all began. So when Bitcoin first started, blockchain technology is used to enable what we call digital ownership of money. And how it works is simply the computers that are connected all runs a piece of software that synchronize the database with every other computer. So every time a new block, which is new transactions are generated, every
Mhm.
computer record that same information in that block. For the case of Bitcoin, around 10 minutes a block is generated. Right? So who sends what to who, the date and time, the address of the sender and the receiver are all recorded as one record. And that one record is in a block of 10 minutes. So meaning in the 10 minutes, there are, for example, 1,000 records. So all around the world, 1,000 transactions has happened. And around 10 minutes, that record will be closed, like a day end closing, in a restaurant. So it
Right.
closes. And then this particular block, when it closes, it will be locked, meaning
Okay.
immutable. It cannot be changed anymore. And this block is chained to the subsequent block, like a restaurant. Tomorrow, I have a new set of transaction. Yesterday I
Yep.
do $100 business. I sell 10 bowls of noodles, and today I have a new day, a new block. So the word blockchain basically means all these blocks of transactions are chained to the next block,
Right.
right? When you put money in a bank, how much money does the bank have about you is from day one. If I put $1 in the bank a day on day one, and the next day I put in $2, today I have $2, right? If I spend $1 the third day, I have $1. And it all the database have to be chained, right? If not, my record won't be correct. So how the
Correct.
blockchain works is simply every block is chained, and all the information that we have, all the ownership we have, is recorded properly. So hence the
Right.
word blockchain.
You just spoke about the database, which in principle a relatively technical term, right? But so it's like a ledger, right?
Yes,
That's yes, yeah, yeah, okay.
yeah, the
So the
record of all
computers,
your documents.
right? These in the beginning probably tens of computers were keeping up this ledger, then hundreds of computers, thousands of computers, and
Yes,
now actually millions of computers taking care of these ledgers worldwide
yes, yes,
to
yes.
remain the security of that of the
Mm.
blockchain. Okay,
Yeah.
very
So one
interesting.
thing I want to explain,
Mm,
maybe our listeners may think, why would somebody keep the record, right? Or run a computer to keep the record?
right,
And in all the blockchain, all the cryptocurrency um, um, offerings today, it incentivizes the people who does the job, right? So, for example, on the Solana blockchain or on the Bitcoin blockchain, like when I said mentioned 10 minutes, yeah. So every 10 minutes, new coin are issued into circulation, and those who does this work or does the process of recording the transaction gets rewarded. Yeah. So
right.
hence, this is the way in which it incentivizes anybody and everybody to run a computer that does it. Of course, our listeners who are interested in doing that, they can. But if you are not interested, you just want to use a system, you're assured that all these systems are run by computers that are all around the world, right?
Right.
And the more computers that runs it, the more secure and decentralized it is, right?
Correct.
So once you understand how it works, the more you realize that this is far better than any system in the world, because you have something that runs on something that is run by the majority of people, all right, or the consensus of the majority of the people.
Yep. What you just explained is actually in this 9-page white paper. I will put a link down below, just for anybody that's interested to want to read a bit more. At the end
Mhm.
of the white paper, it gets extremely technical, but I think the first 4 or 5 pages are easy to read and really explain in much more detail as well. So let's dive a little bit more into the real world assets. I had a very interesting conversation the other day. I was at a kind of a conference here in Kuala Lumpur, where we have many conferences, and I was talking to 3 property developers, local property developers, 2, I would say mid-range from a size point of view, and one was a very large property developer. And we're talking about real world assets and about their properties and their buildings and all this. And then I mentioned that I'm also in real world assets. And then one of them says, "But Frank, you're doing this tree planting, right? How can that be a real world asset?" So I
Mhm.
said, "Have you heard of forests?" And then he
Mhm.
looked at me and he was like, "Oh, okay, I got it." So
Anything that's tangible can be a real world asset, literally, right?
exactly. Yeah, yeah. So in principle, yes, we are tokenizing each and every tree in TreeTherium. That's our aim. But of course, we're all about tokenizing forests. And currently, we have some projects going on in some different parts here in Asia, where we have requests from actually palm oil estates
Wow.
and estate owners that have, yeah, tens of thousands of trees over tens of thousands of acres. It's unbelievable. The numbers are staggering here in Asia. And you hardly understand that when you are living in a big city like Kuala Lumpur, where there's, I wouldn't
Mhm.
say, much forest left. But so, what do you see, Kian, from a real world asset tokenization point of view? Where do you see that the real benefits would be for anybody that want to tokenize their real world assets? Or let's talk about the real world assets first, and then we talk about the trees.
I mean, anything that is tangible in the real world, right? Currently, if you own it, there's one way of ownership. Maybe with the land office, or a tree that's in my garden, I know it's mine, but that's only one way of owning it. But with the current blockchain technology, it has enabled digital ownership, right? So in most cases, if you're able to prove the ownership of something digitally, especially in an immutable way, verifiable way on the blockchain, it adds tremendous value to it. Yeah. So that's where I would think that if you currently have land or trees, right, especially when trees are generating what they call reducing the carbon emissions, all those can be quantified, right? And once it is on the blockchain, right, if you got a piece of land, right, X acre of land, and say, hey, I own that, but people will say, hey, that land can be an empty land, with no trees. But today I
Right.
can prove that these are the trees that are on my land because it is verified. And and then through some calculation, these are the way my trees are contributing to the environment. Um, it's tokenized, and I can now probably claim credits for it, right? And depends on
Right.
how our chain project works. Eventually, when we work with more and more parties and more people, then it will be a lot of value, right? Because we can prove and we can verify. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I can add something to that as well, because you just mentioned credits, and in the last, let's say, 6 months since we've been talking about TreeTherium openly. I mean, before that we were already working on the plans, but in the last 6 months, when we have been talking to people about what our plans were and how we're going to execute them,
Mm-hmm.
quite often the first response from and I some of them have been high end people high up in the corporate world. The first moment I mention trees, they say carbon credits. So
Yep.
that's the second thought straight away. So in principle, and this is important for everybody who's listening at this moment, we are not about the carbon credits. The
Yep.
carbon credit industry is a very complicated industry where we don't want to burn our fingers yet. And there is a yet here. At a later stage, we will explain how exactly that works. But for us, it's
Mm.
all about planting trees. Many of the trees that we're going to be planting are going to be fruit trees, so that actually make sure that we have produce out of these trees, right? So people don't
Mm.
have to go hungry, or you can sell the fruits, which means turns into money. But on the other hand, of course, every tree sequesters carbon, right? And then that's a problem. Here in Asia, it's not the real big problem yet. It hasn't. The carbon problem hasn't really gotten into the legislation yet. But if we look, for instance, at countries like the Netherlands, Germany, and some of the other European countries, they are choked. The whole industry and economy is choked by the
Mm.
carbon policies that are held, for instance, in this case, by the European Union. So the sequestering of carbon is an important part. And we do understand that. But
Mm.
at this moment, one of the things that we're going to do through Ethereum is we're going to measure. So if we plant a durian tree, we're going to measure how much carbon that durian tree has sequestered and how much oxygen it
Mm.
has produced over the years. So that's an important part. Let's not talk about the carbon credits yet. There will be
Yep.
carbon credits somewhere down the line. Once we have planted our first million, 2 million, 5 million, or 5 billion trees, which the numbers are crazy, but a must, obviously must. So I think it's important that people understand that we're all about planting trees first, doing good for the earth, making the planet greener, producing more fresh oxygen for us, all of us. And
Yep.
hopefully that helps us to combat pollution in itself as well. So that's what we're in principle all about. And
Yep.
yeah, tokenizing that is going to be, in many ways, it's an interesting idea.
Mm.
The technology that we are building at the moment, and you know this because you're also in contact with the tech team, is quite
Mm.
challenging at times, but
Yep.
it's a lot of fun to work with a young group of people to, create the ideas that we write on a piece of paper, and they create it into computer programs and applications and all of this. It's a lot of fun. So, Kian, what would you like to add to the tokenization of all the real world assets that we have been discussing in the last half hour?
I mean, most people will look at it as what's in there for me, right? So when something is tokenized, whether the token has value or not depends on a few factors, right? Like, of course, its utility, right?
Right.
Like if I have a token that I hold in my wallet, how much is it going to worth? It's entirely based on the demand for it, right? So
Correct.
in our project, our token is going to be on a liquidity pool, right? Just like any stock market situation, it is about how much are there in the pool, people selling it, and how much are there in the pool, people wanting it. That drives
Correct.
the price up and down, right? So as we go along, when more and more people get involved in our tree planting project, there will be more and more demand, for example, for some of these. So corporations that, like you say just now, right, has a regulation demanding that they have to plant number of trees if they have to clear a forest to develop a land, for example, they
Yep.
have to put those trees back, right? So they will pay, right, literally money for people who do that. And
Yep.
one clear way of people proving to the company that have planted those trees is on the blockchain, and then they
Yep.
get paid, right? So that's when the value of our token will gain its value, right? Meaning people willing to pay money for those tokens, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's the same thing that I had a short discussion with Matthias about this morning. In principle, there's people that have the money but don't have the time, so they're willing to spend some of their money so they can still take the credits, but
mm,
other people are actually planting. So in principle, they outsourcing the tree planting. Let's put it
yeah,
this way,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So just to share with everybody here, because often I get the question, how does this tree planting then works within TreeTherium? In principle, there's three main people involved. One is funders. These are people that have the time but not the money.
Mm,
Then we have people that own the land, which are the landowners. So of course we need. I mean, the landowner could be somebody's house, and it could be your
mm,
backyard. You're the landowner and you're the planter, and then of course the third person would be the planters. These are the people that have the fun and excitement to go out in nature together and actually plant trees. And these people, we want to be credited for the work and effort, time and effort that they are putting into it. Don't get me wrong, we're all working to make this planet greener, and that's the whole idea behind it. So hopefully that explains a bit. In future podcasts, we go a little bit much more in detail, where I draw schematics and stuff where you can actually see how
mm,
all of that works. Maybe an important part, because you just mentioned stock markets and everything. So if somebody says, give me some of these tokens, we're not on any stock market yet, right? That is
right.
we have a roadmap, a very clear roadmap, and I'll be honest with you, today is a relatively exciting day because today is the start of our pre-sale. So people can buy the token in pre-sale, but it's not available on on the chains yet, more or less. Officially, the sale will start on what they call a DEX, a decentralized exchange, in January.
Mm,
And at this moment, we'll only be selling our governance token. What is the governance token? Could you explain maybe a little bit more what the governance token is, KM?
okay. So in any crypto project, governance is very important. I talked about majority consensus earlier, right?
Right.
Meaning, for any project that is decentralized, the decision makers is decentralized. So it's not
Right.
like a central bank where the governor just decide, all right, let's print more money, and more money comes into circulation. For a crypto project, these things don't happen like that, right?
Mm.
Via what we call the DAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization,
Correct.
the stakeholders, meaning the more token you hold, the more voting rights you have.
Yep.
So then combine, we just need a simple majority, right? In most crypto projects, 51% of the people decided to do one thing, then we'll, we'll have that implemented. So in the sense, once you start holding those tokens, you will, right, the governance token, you will be able to be a part of the decision making of the project. So it's not founders like Frank and myself or Matthias that makes the decision, yeah, unless we hold a lot of tokens. But we don't intend to hold a lot of tokens because we always
Correct.
believe that any decision made by the majority is the correct decision, right? And then of
Yes.
course the decision made to change certain things is by the majority, so nobody can blame anybody, right? So we don't want to be blamed for the project going a particular direction, but that's all decided by the majority. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that is what I really once I discovered DAO, and I think what we're going to do, KN. Otherwise, this podcast is going to drag on for another hour. Once you start talking about DAOs,
More
let's
questions.
yeah, exactly. Why not we do the following? If you have been listening to this podcast and you would have any questions, fill them in on the comments below. We have a new community manager. Her name is Vimilia. She will take care of it. But if you have any questions on how TreeTherium is going to be implementing the DAO, we would love to do another podcast, maybe next week or when we have time. And we actually dive a little bit deeper on how we're going to use the DAO to steer the direction of TreeTherium. Because I'll be honest with you, you're a traditional businessman, I was a traditional businessman, and we take decisions for the company, right? And sometimes you do that with a group of directors and you take these decisions, but majority your staff doesn't take that many decisions of the actual direction. But with the DAO, it's such a democratic consensus, more or less. Yes. Uh, it's amazing. So let's have a separate podcast on that. And if you would have any questions in regards to the DAO, feel free to comment below, and then we'll pick them up and take them on in the next podcast. KN, it was a pleasure. We just reached the 30 minutes, so it's okay.
Let's hope. I mean, from the response we get, right? We'll see which are the most requested or most people
Yeah.
ask about, and we're going to generate a podcast just talking about that, so they address the biggest concern, biggest issues people have, right? So feel free to put your comments. We really long to see some of these comments, so we can answer them in our podcast.
Looking forward. Okay, a big shout out, by the way, to all the people in Central Africa. I know you're listening in, so thank you very much. But in the meantime, we have people in Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina also looking. So thank you very much, and see you guys soon. And KN, thank you very much for your time and all your
Thanks.
insights. And we
Bye.
talk soon. Yeah,
See
take
y'all
care.
again.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye. Bye.
Bye.